Hi there, folks. My name is Hans Ammitzboll, and I'm with Data Protection Solutions. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to go through a pretty excellent example of a real customer scenario where we used automation to drive efficiency and transformation for our data protection needs at this particular customer. So let's jump right into it. So why automate? Right? So we have a couple of thoughts here on that. The point of automation is to remove productivity bottlenecks. We all know that we want to do that. Innovation, reduction of errors, saving times, creating efficiency. If we want to go back to VMware's own recent CEO, Mr. Pat Gelsinger, he said several years ago, the rule of the cloud is to ruthlessly automate everything. And that's what we want to try and achieve here with our solutions and for our customers as they move forward in their transformation journey. So what is the customer challenge in this use case that we were trying to solve for? Well, obviously, they're trying to transform their IT organization. And in order to modernize their stack, the customer is building a Kubernetes-centric solution set on top of VMware Tanzu, which is great for us. But everything, including backup and recovery of that Tanzu environment, needed to have the capability to integrate into their entire CI/CD pipeline. From a data protection standpoint, that meant protecting Kubernetes, using a fully software-defined infrastructure, automating the deployment and the configuration of all the required components, automating the protection itself, and providing self-service capabilities. Because when we look at other challenges, the big thing we learned very quickly with this organization was that in talking to the DevOps teams, they didn't really know about or care about data protection. They wanted to focus on their applications, features and functions, and not worry about having to integrate additional capabilities into what they were trying to build. So everything had to be straightforward, had to be automated, had to be directly integrated to the workflows they already had in place. Yet, when DevOps wants something, they want it, right? And they need it. So we had to make sure that self-service for things like policy declaration and restores was part of this, again, without making the DevOps team do anything unnatural or different than what they're already used to. So let's take a look at where we start. How do we solve these customer problems when they arise? And this brings us to the square peg and round hole conundrum, as I like to call it, right? Where all vendors have solutions for various different things, and they always, all of them, strive to meet the challenges of our customers, right? We do that, of course, so does everybody else in the ecosystem. But you always have design principles when you're building a solution. You try to determine what it is you want to deliver to your customer. And therefore, you have natural boundaries. You have well-defined edges to what your solution can do. And often that results in this whole square peg solution meeting round hole needs. So what can you do? Either you get a solution that falls short and leaves gaps, or you get something that's so overblown you have to hammer it into place. But there is a third option. And this is where things get fun and interesting. And a clever organization with clever people doing clever things can use the capabilities of today's modern frameworks to fill these gaps, to move from deploying products to really building solutions. And that's what we did with this customer. Moved away from speeds and feeds and got into the business of determining how can we make things work better together? What can we do that's fun and creative and really brings a new challenge to the table that allows us to achieve those transformation goals? So with PowerProtect Data Manager, we focused very much from the ground up on ensuring that automation was always going to be possible. Right? A robust API was the key here. Now, not every customer is in the same place in their journey towards automation, so we wanted to address that as well. We have native data protection plugins to make it easy, things like VRA, VRO, and even VCD, but we also have this fully exposed, robust API set that allows 30 third-party tools and code to interact with our product set. And you can see if you go to developer.dell.com that we have all of our APIs fully documented, got code snippets. We've got ways for our customers that want to go fully direct into the API space to see everything built on top of the stoplight framework. So a really great place to start. And we also have a public repository, a community that we're actively building out right now. We've just started, but we're planning on expanding it quite a bit, that has some automation enablers already there. And a lot of what we have there is what we started building with this customer and several others to allow you to do all of this automation workflow building. So let's take a quick look at the solution that we actually created for this customer. Okay? So obviously what we want to do is take all of those triggers for automation, reasons to automate, innovation, saving time, maximize ROI, reduce errors, and bring those to the solution. So with things like Ansible and PowerShell, we were able to integrate to vSphere, Tanzu, and through APIs directly into our application solution set. That would be PowerProtect DD Virtual Edition and PowerProtect Data Manager, with the ultimate goal of extending that into the Kubernetes space built on VMware Tanzu, since that is where the applications were going to be running. So what do we automate? Well, this is important. Hopefully it doesn't bore anybody because it's a lot of bullet points, but it's really critically important to understand just how much work goes into deploying a data protection solution. There's the deployment of the actual virtual appliances themselves. There's the configuration of those appliances, things like DNS, NTP, and other services. There's the addition of the underlying infrastructure components to those virtual appliances. And then there's the integration back into the asset sources. So let's look at what was automated. First, the data protection stack itself. So here we're using PowerProtect Data Manager as well as PowerProtect DD Virtual Edition. So we had to deploy those into the vCenter. They run as OVA, so deploy the Data Manager OVA, assign host name, FQDN, IP address, so on and so forth, power it on, and then move on to the DD OVA itself. Same thing, add a virtual disk to this virtual machine, add all the configuration parameters, assign a VM network, and then test IP connectivity. So this is really just about getting OVAs up and running as VMs inside vCenter. Now we have to move on to the next component, configuring this data protection software and protection storage appliance. So adding that disk that we added to the OVA and importing it into the DD virtual appliance, creating a file system, enabling the file system, adding DD boost protocol, again, setting the system passphrase. So you can see there's many steps here that typically are done manually and take time. If you're looking at a traditional deployment, this could be a data protection specialist at the customer. It could be a DPS services engagement where you've got to worry about scheduling and availability. So all of these things take time, and that time starts to add up. Moving forward, we want to invoke the configuration of PowerProtect Data Manager itself. We use the REST API for that as well, accept the EULA, query the initial configuration, update passphrases, add the time zone, and so on again. So here we're actually making these virtual machines, these OVAs that we deployed, usable within the construct of this vCenter environment. It gives yet one more set of configuration parameters that need to take place. And that's integrating these back into vCenter, because the vCenter that these appliances are running on is also one of the asset sources that we want to protect. So we're going to go ahead and update PowerProtect Data Manager via the REST API, get the status, add PowerProtect DD as a target data protection storage device to PPDM, and then add vCenter as an inventory source to PPDM, so that now we can discover all the VMs and all of the rest of the assets inside of this vCenter, apply protection policies to them, and then write those image protection snapshots back to a DDVE. So this is a full stack deployment process here, which allows you to take all of these manual steps that I've just run through, and there's quite a few. Hopefully you saw that, and I didn't bore you to death here. But it was important for folks to understand really what goes into this, because all of these steps can take hours or days. And if you're waiting on scheduling for PS resources, for example, it could take even longer than that. What's it look like once we automate it all? 20 minutes. No joke, really. We run the Ansible playbook, and all of those previous bullet points that we just went through, all of which would be manual, are now automated. And within 20 minutes, you're literally in a ready-to-protect state. So this is what we were trying to do for this particular customer, and what we've since done for several other large enterprise customers that are looking for PowerProtect Data Manager and Data Domain in a virtualized deployment as a fully automated stack that can be integrated into their CI/CD pipeline that can sit underneath, whether it's something like a ServiceNow or a custom portal through which they run all their requests. But there's more. We started this conversation with the discussion of the end state being a Kubernetes environment running on top of Tanzu. And with Kubernetes and Tanzu, you probably understand that the primary use case for Kubernetes clusters for end users is something called a TKG guest cluster, or a Tanzu Kubernetes Grid guest cluster. So whenever somebody's coming in and requesting Kubernetes within Tanzu, they're probably asking for their own little cluster. So now we've got all these access sources that, just like VMs in the vCenter analogy, are going to be spun up. We need to be able to find, discover, and protect these TKG clusters automatically. And that's what we've continued to do with this automation journey for this particular customer. When a TKG guest cluster was requested via their provisioning portal, numerous steps took place that allowed us to participate in the automation workstream. A YAML file that's pushed to GitHub, code stream sees the push, it reacts and creates an RBAC sysadmin account for us, gathers the token, deploys the token, trusts the token. Then all of the inbuilt day one automation that PowerProtect Data Manager already has under the covers takes over, deploys a controller, deploys the Valero pod under the covers, interrogates the environment, discovers this new guest cluster, right? And then we can continue on with Ansible playbooks to manage go-forward protection policies and protection rules across the PPDI instances. And protection rules are where we get that real easy declaration of protection for that DevOps organization I mentioned earlier. The ability for them to simply label their Kubernetes namespaces with a word like gold, silver, or bronze, and know that that is their data protection. They don't have to worry about creating schedules or creating policies. That happens behind the scenes. They just declare which policies they want. And of course, self-service, the full capability for any namespace owner to browse all of their existing valid snapshots and to self-initiate those restores. And this really is just the tip of the iceberg, because we have all these automation capabilities. Here's an example of the workflow for guest cluster protection. As I said, customer request portal up to GitHub, and then through various tool sets and both bidirectional interaction between Tanzu, PowerProtect, Python. We're able to gather all of these components. So really a very dynamic environment where every time somebody requests a guest cluster, we're able to, without any other interaction, discover that guest cluster, import it, authorize it, and then start protecting it. And this is really all down to that robust data protection REST API that we created. We've come across many, many customers making similar requests to what this customer asked for. And to date, there's not a single request for what they wanted to do that we haven't been able to meet through the capabilities of the REST API. Again, we're creating this GitHub community where we're going to formalize and publish and share, and of course, like any other community, interact with our users so that we can make this better and better. But this is really a powerful tool set. It allows the no-touch deployment and configuration of all of the data protection stack. It went from hours or even days down to minutes. I think the time for the example screenshot that I showed was actually about 19 and a half minutes. This is what we need for next-gen workloads. It's not just good enough to be able to protect those workloads. You need to interact with those workloads in the same manner that the DevOps teams are creating those workloads to. So that means lots of automation, right? Consumable via all of the modern automation frameworks. And really, it's about creating modern capabilities for today's modern workloads. So we're very happy with this. We think it's a great, great example of what you can do with PowerProtect Data Manager, PowerProtect DDVE, and our REST API sets. So I thank you all very much for your time today. I appreciate your attention. And feel free to reach out to any of your Dell Technologies or DPS representatives if you have any additional questions.